enkelt så.
Varmt välkomna hit till kvällens premiärsamtal inför Aida som jag har premiär här på Operan nu på lördag. Jag heter Katarina Aronsson, jag är dramaturg och programansvarig här och jag har med mig några av huvudpersonerna bakom den här uppsättningen. Aida hade premiär i Kairo 1871 och spelades i det här operahuset höll jag på att säga, men det var det ju inte. Det var det gamla operahuset 1880 första gången och sen har den getts här i ett antal legendariska uppsättningar. Bland annat så gjorde Kungliga Operan en uppsättning med Ragnar Östberg som scenograf 1925. Ni vet han som har ritat Stadshuset. Och sen har vi också spelat den här operan med några legendariska svenska sångare i huvudrollerna. Till exempel Jussi Björling och Birgit Nilsson. Senast som vi gav Aida här, det var 1997. Det var då det var den senaste föreställningen. En uppsättning som Knut Henriksson höll i. Så det är alltså 21 år sedan. Så vi är väldigt, väldigt glada att vi äntligen har Aida på repertoaren igen. So I would very happy to introduce my guests. We have Christina Nilsson, soprano, and she will sing the main role, Aida, yes. Michael Cavanagh, director, welcome. And Magdalena Åberg, who is set and costume designer. Welcome. So, Christina, this is your debut, your first big role here in this house. Could you tell us, how did it happen? Did you get a phone call or what happened?
So I heard about that you were going to put on this production and I told my agent that I really wanted to audition for it. So I was in France last year and I was had 1 week off, so I went back to Stockholm, and then Morandi, the conductor, was here as well at the same week, so I got to sing for him, and that's how it happened.
Great. Magdalena, we are very happy to have you back in the house. You have done several productions here. Maskeradbalen, Stefelio, Julia Romeo, Mats Eks ballet, and also Idomeneo at Drottningholm. But I mean, you are also very much working with theatre at the moment, a lot at Dramaten, but you have been also at Stadsteatern. So what's the difference between working with the opera and theatre and actors and singers?
I think first of all the music, of course, the feelings are somehow they are already there. It's when you know it's going to be very high temperature, and the rhythm is already there, which has been important in this show because we have a lot of timings and moving set design. So I don't think this would have been possible in a dramatic piece because you need to know so much about the time. So that you can never have in theater because you never know the exact rhythm.
And actors and singers, are they different in any way?
Yes.
When it comes to costumes?
Yes, they are. I think in theater they care more about the psychology. They are more in the psychology world. Singers are in a way easier to work with because they most of them, of course, so there are different everywhere, but it's you have more. For me, I decide more in an opera production, not so much discussion.
Okay, so it's easier in a way working with singers.
Yes, it's easier. On the other hand, it could be really good with different opinions. So it's
yeah, okay.
But it is different.
Yeah. Michael, you were here almost 2 years ago, directing Nixon in China, John Adams' opera. So, are there any similarities between Nixon in China and Verdi's Aida?
Wow, how long do we have tonight? Similarities. I would have to say the approach is, I mean, we approach a piece of theater, storytelling, the same way, and this one has a much more straight through line in terms of the narrative. The story is a little more given to us, but that doesn't mean that we don't go looking for the psychological undercurrents and the different themes that are woven through it. It's funny. I think I hear a lot of Verdi and John Adams, and I think that one of the big similarities is how much to discover is how much different composers absorb from other composers, I think without even really understanding. There's a couple moments in Act 3 that as we were listening to you sing it so beautiful, not in the aria, but after, with the duet with Amonasro, that suddenly Mozart came through. It sounded like the Mozart Requiem came just kind of oozing through the music, and the feeling, the emotions that were underneath were exactly right in this combination of voices. And I mean voices from the centuries. All these genius composers. And I think Adams had that in Nixon in China as well, this ability to channel through some sort of, I don't know, osmosis, some sort of musical magic, the voices of countless past generations.
Yeah. I shall just introduce you a bit. Christina Nilsson, you are soprano from Ystad, Skåne.
Yes.
And you won the first prize in the Renata Tibaldi International Voice Competition this autumn. Very prestigious prize. You studied at Lilla Akademin and the Opera School here in Stockholm, and you took your exam last year. Yes. And you have done roles in Vadstena Akademin, and you did Anna here in our production for Unga på Operan, Min bror är Don Juan. And, well, yes, this is your first big main role in an opera. Magdalena Åberg, as I said, you have been working here with several productions, but at Dramaten you have also done Fäder och söner, Det blåser på månen, Anna Karenina recently, and now working with Påklädaren, which is much smaller in one way. And Michael Cavanagh, you are from Canada.
I am.
Yes. You have directed more than 100 main stage productions at opera houses in North America and Europe. Quite impressive. And in 2012, you had this huge international success with Nixon in China at San Francisco Opera, an opera house that you return to quite often.
Yep.
You did Lucia di Lammermoor recently there.
Yes.
And I have read on internet that you also are a teacher. You have a teaching career, working a lot with young singers, and also are a writer of librettos and developing new operas, which is
something I love to do.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
right? New stories, new voices.
Yeah, this is a quite impressive CV, I think. And, so how did it start? How did you come into the opera world?
It started by, I went here because I was lazy. I decided, no, I'm not kidding actually. I have almost no education.
Okay.
Because there's a kind of person, no formal education. There's a kind of people out there that I consider myself part of who love to learn but hate to be taught. I was always terrible in school. I was always the fidgety, itchy one, the one that couldn't, okay, don't tell me, I want to find out for myself. So I was no good in school, up to high school. I have no university training whatsoever. I took, I think, 3 courses. And in that sense, I'm old school. I'm a throwback to the days when people would learn by doing. So I have done your job very poorly. And by the way, she is wonderful and a super exciting debut. Can I call this a debut for Christina?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a coming out party for Christina Nilsson. It's amazing. Anyway, so I was a singer, a poor one. But I tried, and mediocre, I will say. And I've done your job terribly. I was a terrible designer, but I tried, and this is how I chose to discover what it was that I needed to do. And I worked backstage, I worked on stage, I worked in the office, I worked in administration, I was a singer in the chorus, I held a spear in Aida, I drove the truck as we toured Hansel and Gretel to the schools, and I did all of that sort of poorly. And I realized that I knew an awful lot, I knew a little bit about an awful lot of things. And so I think I found myself in the perfect situation now, because it actually really helps me. It helps me to have a bit of an understanding about what the thought process goes through, from a stagehand to a chorister to a soloist to a designer. And it gives me an appreciation and empathy for everybody in this incredibly complicated and collaborative art form. The most, I think, this and major filmmaking are the most intensely collaborative art forms there are.
Okay, if we should focus on Aida and this production.
Let's.
Okay. So this is, I think we can agree on that it's a very good opera, isn't it? So
Amazing.
What makes it so good? Could we try to analyze it? We can help each other here, but I think we'll start with you, Michael.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my job to know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wonderful for the best reason. First, because of the many voices that congeal, that come together to tell this incredibly simple, yet an unbelievably powerful story. This is the great power that all of the great storytellers have. They tell a very simple story about three people who are struggling to make sense of their world, struggling to somehow live the life they want in the face of incredible pressure. We all understand what that's like, to have the enormous conflict between our private desires and our public expectations. Everyone always expects something of us, and even if we impose that on ourselves, we feel that pressure. And that's very often, I would say more often than not, in conflict with what it is that we really want as human beings. We want to follow our hearts and our desires, and so often we're just absolutely not allowed to because of the society that we've constructed. Verdi understood private desires, and he understood public pressures. And in this opera, the two come together in a collision that is monumental. And to be able to do that with the brush strokes of that incredible orchestration and these amazing voices and the opportunities for visual statements is something that has never come together so completely, almost never, as in this opera. It's a towering piece, a masterpiece.
Yeah. Christina, I mean, you are on stage quite a lot, and you have a lot of singing in duets and in ensembles and so on. And you have two big arias. The first one coming quite quick, Ritorno vincitore. And then in the beginning of the third act, you have the other big Aida aria, which is O Patria Mia. So could you tell us the differences between those arias, and could you describe them musically?
Absolutely. I think is one of the fun things about playing and singing Aida is that the role is, it's everything. She starts out really dramatic and the piece ends very lyric. And Ritorno vincitore is a very dramatic aria, and it's right in the beginning of the opera. And then after that, you have to go back and sing very lyric, and O Patria Mia is very lyric and beautiful, and she thinks back to her homeland, and so... What was the question?
The question was to describe the music, and I think you do it perfectly.
Yes, you absolutely are. It's perfect.
Yes. Do you have any sort of favorite phrase or favorite moment in the music that you really now this counts?
Well, for me, I think there's a part when in the duet with the father, Amonasero, he really gets to her. He manipulates her, and when she, how do you say, surrendered to him, the music is so incredibly touching and
Heartbreaking.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, yeah. Magdalena, when you sometimes talk about elephants in the room, I mean, that's an expression, but it's a special expression in this case of Aida, because of course when you do this takes place in Egypt, and the original set designs were of course with all these cliches, you could say, from Egyptian mythology. So could you tell us how did you think about this together with Michael? How do you create a room for this opera?
We didn't want to make... we were very afraid of the Egyptian kitsch. It's hard to do. Egypt, because we all know how it's going to look like, and we couldn't have elephants and all these things that
the administration said no.
The administration said no to elephant, and so we also did not want to put it in a site specific and time specific place or age. We agreed on that.
Mm-hmm. Very early, right off.
Very early.
Right at the beginning.
Also, but on the other hand, we have kept we have kept the colors of what we think is Egypt. So we actually have the gold, and we have this bluish cobalt blue, and we haven't lost connection, I hope, with it.
Absolutely.
But it's more abstract and more clean, I guess.
Mm. You have sort of 3 rooms also in connection with the drama. I mean, what's happening? You have these big scenes with chorus and priests and everything, and then you have these very intimate psychological scenes between Aida and her father and things like that. So that's also, you can also see that in the sets.
Yeah, and it was Michael's description actually about this opera that breathes from a very, like a chamber opera with a love story, and these big official heavy chorus scenes with this triumphal glory. It's like pompous. I don't know what to say. So we needed a room that was could change between all this the 3 states, and there was also a filmic idea which we had in the Triumphal March. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can tell more about it.
Well, the filmic. That filmic approach, I think, is really important from the beginning. This, first of all, it speaks very clearly to a modern audience. We're used to, of course, going, because of our screens, we all have many of them, that we understand this idea of zooming in to really get inside somebody's head and then to open up and expand our world and look at the huge external forces that are around. And we think we can't do that because in a theater because we're limited to one space, but we're not. We can close down the iris of our imagination and open it back up if we choose to. And this is the perfect opera to do that in, because that's what Verdi is doing as well. We know that Aida is often done in big arenas and stadiums and huge outdoor spaces, which is great for about 1/3 of the opera. Maybe even a little less, but 2/3 of the opera is 1 or 2 or 3 people interacting and try to connect and trying to pour their hearts out and trying they're very, very intimate stories. And if we had an opportunity to take that iris idea and make it real and use our theatrical world to close down into the psychological space and then open up into this huge public space, we had a chance to make this opera, I think, give the presentation of the opera the same value that Verdi had in writing it. And that's what we always try to do with a production.
Well, yeah, the action takes place in Egypt, and Aida, she is, And Aida, she's sort of prisoner of war because it's a war going on.
Yes, exactly.
There's an enemy somewhere.
That's right.
And for Aida, it's two conflicts, we could say, because she has to be loyal to her father and her own country, of course, but she is in love with the Egyptian commander of the army, Radames.
Right.
And there's also another conflict because the Egyptian princess, Amneris, she's also in love with Radames. So that's her biggest rival is actually the princess of Egypt. So what do you think about Aida? What do you think about her situation? Can you refer to it? Can you get things from your own experience into that role, or?
Well, you always try to get you try to find some specific things that you can
Of course.
pick from yourself and put in
Yes.
the character to make it more relatable. But, well, I've never been a slave, and I've been in love with my enemy, so, but, you know, have some imagination.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
you just substitute slave for someone who is trapped in a job that's going nowhere. We call ourselves slaves all the time, even though, thank goodness, our society has moved on, this part of the world at least, where we don't own people technically, literally. We might in some other way. You talk about you can't find yourself in this position of feeling like a slave or feeling like a princess, but I think we all have. I think you go to any high school in the world, and that little society, that closed society, you have your slaves and you have your princesses. You have people who are in love with their enemy and don't dare to say it. People with secret desires and public pressures in your office, in your household, in Egypt. And I do this about Egypt because Verdi was not writing about Egypt either. He was probably thinking of Italy, and he was probably thinking of his little region in Italy and all the incredible pressures he was under, and trying to speak to it. And this Italy substitutes for society. It's us. And Ethiopia, these invaders, substitute for the other. These people that we all know who the other is, and the other, we give them different names, but they still have the same feeling for us. And some of the most powerful stories, Romeo and Juliet being one of them, Aida being another, is this idea of crossing over to connect with the other, and how that is considered treasonous, but is maybe the most important thing to creating a better world for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think Verdi is describing it very well in the music, as you said at the beginning, that the role is, the Aida as a role has all expressions. So if you sing the role as you do it, you get all the dramatic feeling that you need for the role. But it's many scenes that you have to be in, and with different people, what you say, acting against you. So how do you dispose of the whole opera? How do you plan for it?
Well,
you sing all the time.
I sing all the time. Try not to be finished after the second act. But,
Yes, that's true.
The second act's final.
This is why I don't want to answer your question for you, but this is why we work in rehearsal, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful collaboration, conversation about, we're at all times trying to put her, this Aida, we're trying to substitute you in those similar circumstances, which is exactly speaking to that last question. Right? You can't imagine what it's like to be the princess of a great nation, but you certainly can imagine yourself in similar situations.
Yeah.
And that's the rehearsal process. So much of the emotion, as Magdalena said at the beginning, is given to us in the music, and wonderful orchestration especially. But there's many, many, many choices to be made along the way. And this is what we do in rehearsal.
Exactly. And I feel that now when you are really true to each emotion and each feeling for each scene, the role doesn't feel so humongous anymore.
It's true.
Because
It's very true.
the music, if if you make it when it's supposed to be lyric, and dramatic when it's supposed to be dramatic, it's you don't get tired to singing all the time, because he wrote it so perfectly, because he writes in rests and places where you can sing out with your full voice.
Yeah. And climbing the tallest mountain in the world seems like an overwhelming task. Singing through this incredibly difficult role seems like an overwhelming task until you break it down into its little parts. And I just do this part, and then I go into the next part. You know, I'm going to climb Mount Everest by putting this foot in front of this one and repeat. And I could, right? And that's how you do it. You break it down into these incredibly interesting, manageable pieces. Yeah. And you look at every moment along the way, all the twists and turns of your story that you tell. And if you have the big arc of the story worked out in our rehearsals, which we have done, then it becomes something that's not only manageable, but something that's really thrilling, actually, to witness.
Magdalena, your task as a costume designer is to dress all these people, which can be quite hard to really. I mean, you really have to find out how they are going to be dressed, because that's almost always the then the solution is clear for everyone. So how have you thought about that? I mean, you have also we have Amneris, which is who is the princess, and then you have the Radames, who is the soldier. So how have you thought?
Well, it is actually harder than being a set designer if you want to work abstract, because you can't make abstract trousers. So you need to get into something.
Abstract trousers.
No.
I think that's going to be the name of my new band. I'm going to start a musical group called Abstract Trousers.
No, I don't know really. I know again that we didn't want to be to put it in the right time. So we in a time 1940s or 30s, or so we have more aim for a more open solution that is like a saga. I don't know what it's called.
Fairy tale?
I can't say
Not
fairy tale,
no.
but
it's fantastical, right? It's a suspension of time and place.
And also for this piece that is so much about individuality and the collective. We were very. We wanted Aida to look like all the other slaves, because she's supposed to be in this collective, but she wants to get out, and she is the princess, but she's not treated like one. No. So that was very an idea. And then there's so much religion in this piece. Many
ceremonies and choruses and so on.
Yes. They make reference to the gods all the time,
all the
plural.
Time. Yeah.
Which is, again, Verdi was making reference to all of organized religion, and we know, reading about Verdi, what he has to say about the power, both beneficial and malevolent, of organized religion.
So what has been the biggest challenge when it comes to stage and sets?
That the stage time is so short.
And rehearsal, yes.
The technical.
We are really in a hurry.
Yeah, and we're ambitious, Magdalena and I. We're very ambitious. Right? We're trying to create a world a physical world that breathes, that collapses and expands, and that's easy to say sitting here with chatting with you lovely people, but to do it on that stage while 3 other operas are running at the same time in repertory, it's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
It's fun though.
And the floor is moving quite a lot.
Everything does. Yeah. It's a world of upheaval, right? It's a world of intimidation, of overwhelming power, and then tiny private lives. And then sometimes the world just erupts in this upheaval. And to show that upheaval, we can't We don't dare just present a pyramid and some columns and a sphinx and let that speak for us. We have to present a world that is also a physical world that's also in upheaval. And Verdi was not writing about a specific time or a specific place. He was not writing about Egypt in the time of the pharaohs. He was writing about us in the time right now. His piece is timeless, so our production tries to be timeless as well.
Yeah. So just for the ending of this, because time runs so fast, so we have to sort of end this nice talk. Christina, after Aida, what would you like to do next?
Hi. I don't know.
No. But
all I can think about is Aida right now.
Yeah. But as a young singer, you have to think about which roles you take and so on. I mean, do you have a coach or a mentor who helps you to think about what is good for your voice and so on?
Yes, I have a fantastic little team. My musical coach, Magnus Svensson, he's a pianist here in Stockholm. Yeah. And I have my vocal coach in Switzerland, Jonathan Morris. So we discuss and to find the right kind of repertoire.
Yeah, yeah. We hope we will see you soon in many other roles here at the Opera House.
I hope so too.
Yeah. But you will be singing in the Birgit Nilsson Jubilee.
Yes, a lot of Birgit Nilsson concerts.
Yeah. Yeah, and you will be on the same stage as Nina Stemme.
Yes.
Yes.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah, because you told me, because when you were a student at Opera Högskolan, you were working here actually.
Yes. I was working in garderoben.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, on this floor, on the
Fantastic.
första raden vänster.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That was my place.
Yeah, and I used to say hello to you in the evenings, and I said, soon you will be. And you told me a story that you were not so good at standing at garderoben because what happened when Nina Stemme sang i Salome?
Well, I'm afraid to tell now because I recognize a lot of these pieces. I watch your clothes. No, well, maybe I wasn't always so observant. When Nina Stemme sang, I sneak inside.
Yeah, that's understandable. Okay, so we are so much looking forward to the performance on Saturday, and thank you so much for coming here and talking.
We should mention that this production is being live streamed on March the 17th.
Yes, yes, we will have also in the Swedish radio on Saturday. It will be live, and also on the 17th of March, it will be live streamed in all Sweden. Yes,
and cinemas.
Streaming, yes.
Yeah.
So you can't miss it. You can come or you can
escape.
just see it and listen to it. So thank you so much and welcome back here and see the performance. Thank you.
Thank you.